Operant conditioning is all about the consequences of behavior, what comes after we do something. So there's two different types of consequences, and those are reinforcers and punishers, and you'll want to know the different types of reinforcers and punishers. Again, this is an example where memorizing the definitions is alright, but it's really not going to help you be able to apply them to examples, which is what you'll need to do on your assessments. So let's start with reinforcers. Now, reinforcers can be classified in two separate ways, so we'll start with the first. Reinforcers are either primary or secondary depending on one thing, and that is if they're naturally reinforcing. If something is naturally reinforcing, like food, water, or touch, then it's a primary reinforcer. In other words, you don't have to learn that that's a good thing. If someone gives you food after you do something, or water after you do something, or touch after you do something, you're more likely to do those behaviors in the future right off the bat, because those are human instincts, animal instincts as well. So anything naturally reinforcing is primary. Some things are still very reinforcing, but they're not natural. We have to learn that they are good things. And these are called secondary reinforcers. There's actually two types of secondary reinforcers, but they have one characteristic in common. That's that they have to be learned. When someone applauds after you do a good play or sing a good song or do something great in sports, that makes you feel good. Well, if you go up to a baby and you just applaud in their face, you'll probably scare them, because babies haven't yet learned that people smushing their hands together loudly means that they like what you have done. But as adults, we've learned that. So applause is an example of a secondary reinforcer. Money is another example of a secondary reinforcer. As adults, we work primarily because we can get money, which we can use to buy other things. Well, if you give a baby a dollar bill, again, it might be fun for like a second, but he'll probably just toss it over his shoulder because he doesn't know why it's reinforcing just yet. So again, primary reinforcers are natural, secondary have to be learned. There's another way to break down reinforcers, and this is probably one of the more confusing topics in the course. Let's start with this. If something is reinforcing, that means it's a reward. Reinforcers are always rewards. But now we're going to break reinforcers down into whether they are positive or negative. When you think positive and negative, I want you to think about the mathematical symbols, because that'll help you out. When you see positive reinforcer, think about an addition sign, because that simply means you are giving a reward. You're giving someone something they like to reward their behavior. So if your child brings home a good grade on a report card and you want them to keep doing that, you could give them something they like. You could give them money or candy. That would be an example of positive reinforcement, because you're rewarding them by giving them something. But you can also use negative reinforcement. Now, negative sounds bad, but it's not. Remember, reinforcers are always rewards. So negative reinforcement means you're rewarding someone by subtracting something. Well, how do you reward someone by taking something away? Well, you take away things they don't like. So if your child brings home a good grade on a report card, you want that behavior to continue, you might say, great job. You don't have to do your least favorite chore this week. And that can be very reinforcing. It's still a good thing. Negative reinforcement is a good thing. But it can be a little bit confusing because we have a tendency to think of negative as bad. Negative doesn't mean bad, it just means taking something away. That takes us to punishers. Punishers are consequences that we don't like. They make us less likely to do the behaviors that came before them. And there's two ways you can punish. Let's say your child cusses you out. Most of us don't want that to happen. You can use punishment by application, and again, application means you're adding something. So this time you might add extra chores. You might spank them. You might yell at them. All of that is adding something they don't want, and so that would be punishment by application. But you can also use punishment by removal. And it's just what it sounds like. It's still a punisher. You don't want this behavior to continue, but now you're removing something, and you remove things they like. So your child cusses you out, don't want that to keep happening, so you take away their cell phone, or their car keys, or their favorite food or dessert. Something that will make them go, I don't want to do that behavior again, because I don't like the consequence that came after it. So make sure you know that there are primary and secondary reinforcers. Primary are natural, secondary are learned. And then you can also use reinforcement in a positive and negative way. Both are rewards. Positive reinforcement means you're giving someone something they want. Negative reinforcement means you're taking away something that they don't want. And then there's two ways to use punishment. Punishment by application, which is giving someone something they don't want. and punishment by removal, which is taking away something they do want. Again, this can be a little tricky, so work with those practice questions, read that section very carefully, and you'll get the gist of how to identify those.